Welcome to another round of skills with Sydney and Sam. Today we're going to be talking about pros and cons, which is one of the distress tolerance skills. And this is handout 5 in the distress tolerance module if you're following along with us. So, pros and cons. You've probably done this before or do this instinctively when you're trying to make decisions. In the DBT world, we do a 4-quadrant pros and cons to make sure we're getting at all of the angles. And we really like a written pros and cons. One, because you can do them ahead of time if you're someone that experiences certain urges. I've talked a lot about my online shopping habits. And so when that comes up, I already have a pros and cons made that I can go reference if my urges are really strong. This also works for things like suicide urges. We can do pros and cons of acting on suicide urges and not acting on suicide urges. And you can pull that baby out when urges are super, super strong and you might not have the capacity in that moment to write out another list. Okay. We also like written because we feel like it helps things stick a little bit more. And if you identify through a pros and cons that your values lie in a particular decision or somewhere else, then that helps kind of reinforce values driven action and decisions. So we're just going to dive in today, and Sam is going to walk us through a pros and cons. So I will share my screen here, and this will be the homework that you will be doing. So follow along so you know what you're doing. Sam, what is the situation today?
All right. So I know that we have touched on this in the past. The medical condition endometriosis is something that both Sydney and I have and continue to learn how to cope with. And when I first got diagnosed, there were a couple of different options that I was given for treatment. I could go on some sort of hormonal birth control, um, or I could kind of do nothing and wait and see. And I used the pros and cons list to kind of work through these decisions and see which one fit best with my goals and my lifestyle.
Good. So in the top half here, what we're going to do is pros and cons of going on hormonal birth control versus pros and cons of not. Does that sound right, Sam?
Yeah, perfect.
So let's start here. And remember, so this top part, pros and cons of going on the birth control. What might be some pros?
Well, my doctor said that it could kind of lessen my symptoms.
Mhm.
Um, they also said that it could kind of just like make my hormones and my cycles more regular.
Mhm. Good.
Um, I think another pro also would be for me feeling like I'm doing something that can help.
Mhm. Taking action, maybe that's how I'll.
Yes, perfect.
And that's hard to do with endo, right? Oftentimes it feels a
Yes,
little crippling.
absolutely.
Anything you can do to, yeah, take ownership and take the power back could be a significant pro. Good. Anything else in the pros?
I think those are the main ones.
All right. How about cons of birth control?
Side effects of hormones. I am a sensitive kitty to begin with, and so adding hormones to the mixer is definitely a little apprehensive.
Hmm. I had a similar con I was considering because I'm also very sensitive to hormones. And oh my goodness, yeah. Again, endo already has enough like side effect things going on to add more to the mix was not something I wanted either. Other cons.
Another con I was thinking about was just like long-term effects of hormonal birth control.
Mhm.
And that was something that I actually had to do more research on to see like what the con what the facts were about those cons versus what my assumptions were.
Yeah. Good place to weave in other skills. Use little check the facts as you're going along. Good. Other cons.
That it's not a cure and that it it might not give me the improvement and the relief I'm looking for.
Mhm. Yeah, I think this is big. This was also something I was thinking about because I had it not work in the past too. Hmm. Good. Any other cons popping up?
I think those are the main ones.
I'm gonna add this for me. I suck at taking pills.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a serious con for me, right? It's
Yeah.
always been a problem, and I didn't know if I could be consistent enough doing it to have any sort of benefit. So now as we shift down here, we're now looking at the pros and cons of not taking the hormonal birth control and choosing to kind of do nothing for the meantime. So what might be the pros of not?
I The first thing that came to mind for this was actually that maybe if I don't do anything about it and I wish hard enough, that means I don't have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, that's not how endo works.
And right, this is a really good example of like emotion mind at its finest.
Absolutely.
Because if we take action, it makes it very real.
Yeah.
I can put that over here. Um, Actually, maybe not. Where would I put that, Sam? Making it real. Which box would that go in?
I think that would be a con of taking it.
You're right. Thank you for thinking for me. Okay. The struggle. All right. How about other pros of not taking birth control?
Not having to kind of add more hormones to already sensitive hormones.
Mm-hmm. Good. Others you're thinking about?
Let's see, pros of not. I would also say avoiding some of the long-term
Mhm.
effects that I would be concerned about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something to consider if that's a fear. Mm-hmm. Anything else, or should we shift over?
I think we can shift over, yeah.
Let's do it. So, what might be the cons of not taking hormonal birth control to address the endo?
Um, Continuing to have kind of unpredictable pain and symptoms.
Good. What else?
Um, Also for me, kind of the sense of like I'm not doing everything I can to take care of myself.
Mhm. Got any others?
Let's see. Yeah, guilt that that is um how I would label it. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think those are the two big ones.
Okay. I think this is a really good pros and cons, right? And you'll notice this is hard. This is a hard decision. There's not necessarily, I mean, you might see a couple more on one side or the other, but there's not necessarily more outweighing on surface level. But I am really curious. And one thing we can do with pros and cons is ask, where do our values lie? So, Sam, what here is like most important for you?
That for me, that sense of wanting to do everything that I can to take care of myself was huge. And so that weighed, I felt like that kind of held a lot more weight
Mhm.
than maybe some of the pros and cons in other areas.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And this is important. So, as you're going through your pros and cons, really be paying attention to what hits home the hardest. versus what doesn't, right? Because I'll be honest, for me, like the adding hormones was a bigger factor. Like I truly, like when I've tried this in the past, it's been truly miserable on top of a condition that already um, brings a lot of pain, right? So yeah. Anything else you want to say to this, Sam?
I was just going to say that I think that also highlights something really important, and that is that pros and cons are so individual, and that, Sydney and I have like the same condition. We have gone through kind of the same weighing of what to do for treatment options. And we may have come to two completely different conclusions because our values and what is a pro and what is a con to each of us is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so I think that is just something important to keep in mind, that your pros and cons and your values are unique to you, and what other people are doing and what decisions they're making don't influence or make right or wrong the decisions that you're making.
It's all valid, right? And this is such a great example because I think we did kind of land on different sides here. And I think we can both feel good about that, right? Like, I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, we made the best decision for us, and that's okay. Good. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. I will post that same worksheet for your completion, and you're always free to go back and reference that. My suggestion for homework is to pick, one or two big ticket items for you where you notice urges are really high, you might have a hard time resisting, and do a pros and cons before the situation hits. Have that to reference. And then once you get the practice, you can either pull up the pros and cons when urges are really high, or you can make another one in that moment if you're in the space to do so. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.